There comes a moment in every life when you get tired of running, tired of proving, tired of begging the world to see you. You wake up one day and realize you've been spending your power like loose change, chasing people, chasing applause, chasing approval, chasing the next maybe. And then something shifts. You stop chasing. You start aligning. And suddenly everything that once ran from you starts running towards you. This is the moment your energy changes. This is the moment you stop being hungry for attention and start attracting destiny. Tonight, I want to talk about what really happens when your energy no longer chases and everything starts to chase you. The day you stop begging is the day you become magnetic. And the crazy part is nobody teaches you that. They teach you how to chase. They teach you how to run after grades, run after titles, run after applause, run after love, like love is some prize at the end of a race. They don't teach you how to stand still in your worth. They don't teach you how to sit in silence with your spine straight and say, I am already enough. So we grow up tired of proving, tired of smiling for rooms that don't see us, tired of shrinking just to be chosen. We beg with our actions even when our mouths stay quiet. We overgive, we overexplain, we overwork, we overstay, and we call it loyalty, hustle, patience, but deep down it's just fear dressed up as effort. I've seen talented people destroy their own magic by trying too hard to be accepted. I've seen people with voices powerful enough to shake a room whisper because they were afraid of being judged. I've seen people stay in relationships that drained them because being lonely felt scarier than being empty. And every time the pattern is the same. When you beg, you leak your power. The world feels that leak. Energy doesn't lie. You can wear confidence on your face and desperation in your spirit. And the spirit always speaks louder. There is a moment in life when something inside you gets tired of asking, tired of knocking on doors that never open, tired of sending texts that come back cold, tired of auditioning for spaces that treat you like an option. That moment hurts. It feels like rejection. At first, it feels like loneliness. It feels like standing in the middle of your life with nothing to hold on to. But that moment is the doorway, because when you stop begging, you stop bending. And when you stop bending, you stand tall enough for the right things to finally see you. Real magnetism is quiet. It's not loud. It doesn't chase. It doesn't convince. It doesn't post every move for approval. It just is. Think about the people you're naturally drawn to. They're not trying to impress you. They're not asking for permission to exist. They move like they belong wherever they are. That's the secret. Belonging to yourself first. The world responds differently to someone who is rooted than to someone who is reaching. I remember watching people who hustled so hard for attention that they forgot how to create in peace. They were always checking numbers, always refreshing screens, always measuring their worth in likes and replies. And then I saw someone else disappear for a while. No noise, no begging, just quiet work, quiet faith, quiet discipline. When they came back, the world was waiting. The difference wasn't talent, it was energy. One was chasing the mirror. The other was building the source. When you beg, you put your worth in someone else's hands. You wake up hoping today is the day they choose you. You go to sleep wondering what you did wrong. Your mood depends on messages you didn't send to yourself. That's not love. That's not ambition. That's captivity. And you don't even realize you're in prison because the door looks like opportunity. But the day you stop begging, you take the key back. You stop asking the world who you are and you start deciding. There's science behind this. Even if it sounds spiritual, the brain is wired to detect confidence and certainty. Human beings are drawn to emotional stability the way birds are drawn to calm air. When you stop pleading for validation, your nervous system settles, your voice changes, your posture changes, your choices change, and people feel that shift before you ever speak about it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. And respect is the beginning of attraction in every area of life. Love, leadership, business, creativity, everything. I've watched someone chase a job for years. Emails, calls, extra hours, always saying yes, always available, always invisible at the same time. One day they walked away and built their own lane. No announcements, just consistency. 2 years later, the same people who ignored them were asking for collaboration. Nothing about their talent changed in 2 years. What changed was their relationship with their own worth. They stopped begging to be chosen, and suddenly they were being invited. Begging is rooted in the belief that you are lacking, that if you don't grab fast enough, someone else will take your place, that love is scarce, that opportunities are rare, that value is limited. But magnetism is rooted in abundance. It moves like there is more than enough space for your authenticity to breathe. It trusts that what is meant for you does not need to be forced. It trusts timing instead of panic. We confuse patience with passivity and hunger with desperation. Hustle without grounding turns into anxiety. Ambition without self-respect turns into self-abandonment. You can work relentlessly without begging. You can desire deeply without chasing. You can be driven without being desperate. The difference shows in the way you walk into a room. One energy enters asking, "Do you see me?" The other enters declaring, "I see myself." There's a strange fear that comes with stopping the chase. At first, it feels like you are giving up, like you're falling behind, like you're losing everything you've worked for. But what you're actually losing is the illusion that control comes from force. When you slow down and stop grasping, you give life space to respond to you. You give people space to feel your absence. You give opportunity space to recognize your value. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space for alignment. I've seen people stop posting and suddenly get remembered. I've seen people stop texting and suddenly get missed. I've seen people stop explaining and suddenly get understood, not because the world is cruel, but because energy responds to contrast. When you remove the noise of begging, the frequency of your presence becomes clear. The day you stop begging is the day you stop outsourcing your identity. You stop performing for love. You stop negotiating your boundaries. You stop trading your peace for potential. You realize that resentment is simply the price you pay for abandoning yourself too many times. And you finally decide you are too expensive for that lifestyle. Magnetism doesn't come from perfection. It comes from alignment, from doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. From telling the truth, even when it costs you comfort. From walking away from what drains you, even when it scares you. From choosing growth over approval. When your inner world lines up with your outer actions, there is nothing to chase. Life begins to respond. You were never meant to beg for a seat at a table that requires you to shrink. You were meant to build tables that reflect the size of your vision. You were never meant to plead for love that requires you to suffer. You were meant to become the kind of person who only recognizes love that feels safe. You were never meant to audition for your destiny. You were meant to prepare for it in private so it would recognize you in public. And once your energy shifts, once your spine straightens, once your heart stops negotiating with fear, once your worth no longer depends on external permission, things begin to move in ways that feel unreal. Not easy, not instant, but real. Doors open without force. People approach without you leaning forward. Opportunities circle instead of being chased. You don't become passive, you become precise. You don't become quiet, you become intentional. The day you stop begging is not the day you get everything you want. It's the day you finally stop humiliating yourself for things that were never aligned with who you are becoming. It's the day you stop confusing attachment with destiny. It's the day you stop calling survival love. It's the day your nervous system learns peace, and peace is magnetic in a world addicted to chaos. You don't need louder dreams. You need deeper roots. You don't need more attention. You need more alignment. You don't need to be chosen by everyone. You only need to be chosen by yourself once, fully and without apology. Because after that, the world stops seeing you as desperate. It starts seeing you as dangerous in the best way. And what's dangerous is not your hunger. What's dangerous is your certainty. What's dangerous is a person who no longer chases because they already know who they are. What's dangerous is a person who stopped begging and started becoming. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your power. Not tomorrow, not after you win, not after they finally see you. The moment you stop running after what keeps running from you, something inside your spine straightens. Your breath gets deeper, your thoughts get quieter, and for the first time in a long time, you are no longer moving from fear, you are moving from truth. Most people don't realize how tired they are because the world taught them to confuse exhaustion with ambition. We learn to chase love like it's a reward, chase money like it's oxygen, chase validation like it's survival. And somewhere in all that running, we forget that power was never outside of us to begin with. Chasing gives the illusion of control, but it's actually submission. Every time you chase, you say, "You decide my worth." You wake up checking who replied, who noticed, who approved. Your mood becomes a response to other people's behavior. That's not freedom, that's emotional debt. And debt always comes with interest, anxiety, resentment, burnout, a quiet anger you swallow every day and call patience. But the moment you stop chasing, you stop negotiating your value. You stop auditioning for your own life. You take your power back from every place you left it. I've seen people work themselves into the ground trying to be chosen, staying late, over-delivering, undervaluing, smiling through disrespect just to feel secure. Then one day they leave, they choose themselves. And suddenly the same rooms that ignored them start talking about them, not because their skill magically changed overnight, but because their energy did. Desperation repels, grounded confidence pulls. People don't always respond to your effort, but they always respond to your certainty. When you chase, your nervous system is always in fight or flight, always on edge, always scanning for loss. But when you stop chasing, your body finally feels safe enough to think clearly. You make better decisions, you hear your intuition, you stop reacting and start choosing. And that's where power really lives, in choice, not in force, not in pressure, not in proving. There's a strange fear that shows up when you stop chasing. It feels like standing still in a world that keeps running. It whispers, what if you fall behind? What if you get forgotten? What if this was your only chance? But that fear is just the addiction leaving your system. Addiction to approval, addiction to urgency, addiction to being needed instead of being respected. Withdrawal always hurts before healing begins. When you stop chasing, you begin to attract on a different frequency. You no longer move toward what looks exciting but drains you later. You move toward what feels steady and grows you slowly. You stop confusing intensity with destiny. You stop calling chaos chemistry. You stop calling breadcrumbs a meal. And that alone changes the entire direction of your life. Not because the world changed, but because your standards did. I watched someone chase a relationship for years, always available, always forgiving, always shrinking to keep the peace. They called it love, but their eyes were tired. Their spirit was tired. One day they stopped chasing. They didn't become cold. They became clear. They walked away from what kept taking without giving. Months later, they met someone who met them in the middle without being asked. Same heart, same capacity for love, different results. Power was never missing. Discernment was. Chasing keeps you focused on what you don't have. Stopping keeps you anchored in what you are becoming. And the mind follows attention. If your attention lives in lack, your life will feel like lack. If your attention lives in growth, your life will start to reflect expansion. When you stop chasing, your vision gets sharper. You stop being distracted by every open door and start recognizing your door. Power is not loud. It doesn't rush. It doesn't beg to be seen. It moves with patience, with timing, with precision. Look at anything in nature that is truly powerful. The ocean doesn't chase the shore. Gravity doesn't chase the planets. The sun doesn't chase the sky. They attract because they are stable in what they are. Your life works the same way. The more rooted you become in your true identity, the less you have to run after alignment. When you stop chasing, you also stop abandoning yourself. You stop saying yes when your soul is screaming no. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop proving your loyalty at the cost of your peace. You realize that being chosen by the world means nothing if you have not chosen yourself. And that realization hurts at first because it exposes how many times you tolerated what you didn't deserve just to avoid being alone. But that pain is honest, and honest pain heals faster than comfortable lies. There is a kind of confidence that only comes after you've been broken by your own chasing, after you've run miles for people who wouldn't take a step for you, after you've poured into rooms that never poured back. That kind of confidence doesn't need applause. It doesn't need confirmation. It comes from knowing what it costs to betray yourself and refusing to ever pay that price again. Once you stop chasing, you still work, you still dream, you still build. But now you're building from alignment, not anxiety. You're working from vision, not fear. You're moving with intention, not impulse. You don't jump at every opportunity. You choose the ones that choose you back. You don't try to be everything to everyone. You become everything to your purpose. And slowly, without force, things begin to respond to the version of you who is no longer hungry for permission. The right people find you without being hunted. The right opportunities recognize you without being chased. The right doors open because you finally stopped trying to break into rooms that were never built for you. Your power returns piece by piece, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your power because you are no longer running from yourself. You are no longer bargaining with your worth. You are no longer living in reaction. You are standing in authorship, and an authored life is dangerous in the best way because it cannot be manipulated, rushed, or owned by anyone who did not help write the truth of it. Power was never something you had to earn from the outside. It was something you forgot on the road while you were busy trying to be chosen. The moment you stop chasing, you don't become passive. You become sovereign, and a sovereign spirit is not vague. It attracts Stillness is louder than desperation. That sounds backwards in a world addicted to noise, but truth often does. We were raised to believe the loudest person in the room is the strongest, the fastest mover is the winner, the one who fills every silence is the one who matters. So we learn to talk over our fear, over our doubt, over our loneliness. We learn to post instead of process, to chase instead of breathe, to prove instead of be. And in all that motion, we forgot the power of standing still. Desperation is noisy because it is frightened. It needs to be seen, chosen, answered, validated right now. It sends message after message. It over-explains, it over-promises, it overreaches. It confuses urgency with importance. Stillness doesn't rush. Stillness doesn't beg. Stillness sits in its own certainty and lets the world come close enough to listen. And the world always listens to what doesn't need to shout. You can feel the difference when someone walks into a room. One person arrives scattered, eyes searching, energy restless. Another arrives calm, grounded, unshaken. They may speak fewer words, but the room adjusts to them. That's not confidence you can fake. That's alignment you earn by refusing to live in panic. People respect stability because deep down, everyone is tired of chaos. The loudest cry for attention often comes from the place that feels most unseen. That's why Inspiration performs. It wears costumes. It rehearses faces. It bends itself into whatever shape it thinks will be loved today. And every time it changes shape, it loses another piece of its truth. Stillness doesn't shapeshift. It remains. It listens. It observes. It chooses its moments. And because it chooses, every word carries weight. I once watched two people handle the same rejection. One exploded, begging for another chance, flooding the air with explanations and promises. The other went silent, not with bitterness, with dignity. They took the loss into their chest, processed it in private, and kept walking. Months later, the one who begged was forgotten. The one who moved in stillness was remembered and respected. The difference wasn't talent, it was composure. Stillness is not weakness. It is restraint powered by self-trust. It is knowing you don't have to chase every misunderstanding to prove your innocence. It is knowing you don't have to answer every insult to prove your strength. It is knowing you don't have to respond to every delay to prove your worth. Desperation reacts, stillness responds, and that pause between stimulus and response is where your power lives. There is science behind this too. When you are desperate, your nervous system stays locked in fight or flight. Your decisions shrink. Your tunnel vision widens fear and narrows wisdom. When you cultivate stillness, your mind returns to clarity. You read rooms better. You read people better. You read yourself better. You stop making permanent choices based on temporary emotion. Stillness looks like not checking your phone every 30 seconds for proof that you matter. Stillness looks like letting a conversation end without forcing the last word. Stillness looks like allowing silence in a room without stuffing it with noise. Stillness looks like doing the work when no one is clapping, desperati, on wants immediate feedback. Stillness is willing to wait for real results. People think influence comes from volume. It doesn't. It comes from gravity, and gravity is quiet. You don't hear it, but you feel it pulling everything into order. The most powerful leaders, creators, and lovers are not always the loudest ones. They are the ones whose presence settles the air. Their calm interrupts chaos. Their restraint makes people lean in. Stillness is how you stop auditioning for your life. It is how you return to your center after the world teaches you to scatter yourself everywhere for approval. It is how you reclaim your edges and your boundaries and your breath. When you master stillness, you no longer chase reactions. You create impact. Desperation begs to be chosen. Stillness knows it already belongs. One performs, the other embodies. One drains the room, the other charges it. And people can feel the difference even when they can't explain it. They trust the one who is not trying to sell them a version of themselves. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, stillness teaches you who you really are without the noise of expectation. It teaches you patience in a world addicted to speed. It teaches you depth in a culture obsessed with surface. It teaches you how to move with intention instead of impulse. And when you do speak from that place, when you finally move from that place, your words don't scatter. They land. Your steps don't stumble. They echo because things born from stillness carry weight. Desperation is loud for a moment. Stillness is heard for a lifetime. What you chase, you tell yourself you lack. Every pursuit carries a confession. Every desperate reach is a quiet statement about what you believe is missing inside you. We don't like to admit that because chasing feels productive. It feels noble. It feels like effort. But beneath the motion, beneath the grind, beneath the constant reaching, there is often a story playing on repeat that says, I am not enough yet. And the world will always agree with the story you tell yourself. You don't chase love when you feel loved. You don't chase money when you feel secure. You don't chase attention when you feel seen. You chase when there is a hole inside you trying to be filled from the outside. And the outside will never be able to do that job. It can distract you for a while. It can numb you for a moment, but it cannot complete you. That's why the chase never ends, because you're running after a feeling you were supposed to grow, not grab. We grow up trained to measure ourselves against what we don't have. Someone else's success becomes proof of our delay. Someone else's relationship becomes a mirror for our loneliness. Someone else's spotlight becomes evidence of our invisibility. And slowly, without realizing it, we stop building from wholeness and start running from lack. The mind becomes a thirsty place, always scanning, always comparing, always reaching for the next thing it thinks will finally make us feel enough. I've watched people chase love so hard that they disappeared inside it. They silenced their boundaries. They rewrote their values. They accepted crumbs and called it romance because at least it was something. They weren't chasing a person. They were chasing relief from the fear of being unchosen. And every time they chased, that fear grew stronger because the message they kept sending their own heart was, what I am is not enough to be loved as I am. I've watched people chase success until their health collapsed, working endless hours, ignoring their bodies, postponing their joy, telling themselves they would rest later, live later, breathe later. They weren't chasing money. They were chasing freedom they believed only money could give them. And in the process, they sacrificed the very freedom they were trying to buy. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between a physical threat and an emotional lack. When you believe you are missing something essential, your body goes into survival mode. You rush, you cling, you overthink, you react, you make choices from hunger instead of wisdom. And hunger always distorts judgment. A starving person will eat what slowly poisons them if it promises immediate relief. When you stop chasing, something uncomfortable happens first. You feel the lack more clearly. You feel the loneliness without distraction. You feel the fear without motion to hide behind. But that feeling is not your enemy. It is the truth finally being heard. And the truth is the only thing that can actually heal what you've been trying to outrun. When you chase validation, you tell yourself your voice is not enough on its own. When you chase approval, you tell yourself you're not safe to stand alone. When you chase attention, you tell yourself you are invisible. When you chase perfection, you tell yourself you are broken. And the mind becomes loyal to the story it hears the most. It will shape your reality to match that belief. But when you pause, when you stop running for a moment, when you sit with who you are without trying to upgrade it for the world, something shifts. You start discovering that the lack was not a fact. It was a belief inherited, absorbed, repeated, and beliefs can be replaced. Not with affirmations shouted in the mirror, but with actions that prove a new truth gently over time. You prove abundance by honoring your time. You prove worth by protecting your boundaries. You prove visibility by speaking even when your voice shakes. You prove love by choosing yourself in moments you once would have begged. And slowly the chase loses its grip. Not because you stop, wanting, but because you stop needing desire to rescue you. Wanting can be clean, wanting can be creative, wanting can be expansive, but needing is heavy, needing is loud, needing is the sound of your power outsourced to something that was never meant to carry it. The world reflects back what you move from. If you move from lack, you will see scarcity everywhere. If you move from worth, you will find alignment in places that once felt closed. Life does not respond to what you say you want as much as it responds to what you quietly believe you deserve. What you chase, you tell yourself you lack. But what you choose with calm, you declare yourself ready for. And readiness changes how life meets you. It changes how people treat you. It changes the way your own spirit stands inside your chest. Because the moment you stop running from who you are, you stop telling yourself a lie about who you are not. When you stop running, life runs to meet you. That's the truth. Nobody tells you while you're sprinting through deadlines, expectations, disappointments, and dreams that feel just 1 inch out of reach. We are taught to run from fear, run towards success, run after love, run ahead of our doubts. We stay in motion so we don't have to feel what's actually happening inside us. Running becomes protection. Running becomes identity. Running becomes the proof that we are trying. But trying is not the same as being aligned. Running makes you believe everything is urgent, that if you slow down, you will lose your chance, your spotlight, your edge. But the truth is, most of what's truly meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It needs to be met. And you can't meet anything when you're always 10 steps ahead of your own soul. You miss signs, you ignore warnings, you settle for noise because silence feels like falling behind. I've seen people run from heartbreak straight into ano. Their heartbreak just to avoid feeling the first one. I've seen people run from their purpose into busyness because purpose demands stillness before it demands action. I've seen people run from themselves for years and wonder why nothing ever feels like home. A movement without meaning creates momentum in the wrong direction. You can be exhausted and still be lost. When you stop running, you finally hear yourself. The noise fades, the pressure loosens, the constant comparison quiets down. And in that quiet, you realize how much of your life was built in reaction instead of intention. You realize how many choices were made in panic instead of peace. That's uncomfortable. That's why most people keep running. Silence feels like exposure. Stillness feels like standing in front of a mirror with no filter. But that mirror is where life begins to move toward you. Because when you stop running, your energy settles. Your decisions slow down. Your vision sharpens. You stop chasing what looks familiar and start recognizing what feels true. You stop grabbing at what is loud and start noticing what is steady. And steady is where real things grow. There's a strange magic that happens when desperation leaves your body. You don't become passive. You become deliberate. You don't lose your fire. You gain control of the flame. You stop scattering your effort everywhere and start pouring it where it actually matters. And suddenly things start responding, not because you demanded them, but because your presence is no longer pushing them away. I watched someone run from opportunity to opportunity, changing paths every year, chasing whatever looked like the fastest win. They were always busy, always moving, always tired, nothing rooted, nothing stable. One day they stopped. They stayed in one place. They built slowly. They learned patience the hard way. 2 years later, what they built in stillness outgrew everything they chased in motion. The difference wasn't talent, it was focus. Life doesn't meet chaos with clarity, it meets clarity with opportunity. When your spirit is rushed, everything that comes to you is rushed. When your heart is frantic, everything that enters your life carries confusion. But when you slow down from the inside, life begins to approach you differently. People become more honest, opportunities become more precise. Your intuition becomes louder than your anxiety. Stopping doesn't mean quitting. It means choosing direction over speed. It means realizing that arrival is not about how fast you move, but how aligned you are when you arrive. You can run your whole life and still never touch what was meant for you. Or you can stop, breathe, listen, and allow what was already moving towards you to finally catch up. Running is the language of fear. Stopping is the language of trust. Trust that what is meant to find you will not miss you. Trust that you do not have to force what is already written for your growth. Trust that you are not late for your life, even when it feels quiet, especially when it feels quiet. When you stop running, you stop colliding with lessons and start absorbing them. You stop repeating cycles and start closing them. You stop looking for confirmation outside and start recognizing truth inside. And once that recognition happens, life moves differently around you. The chaos that once chased you slows down. The right people arrive without being hunted. The right doors open without being kicked in. Stillness trains your eyes to see what speed kept you blind to. It teaches your nervous system safety after years of survival. It teaches your heart that it doesn't have to earn rest through exhaustion. And in that safety, you become recognizable to the things that couldn't reach you while you were always in a hurry. When you stop running, life runs to meet you, not because you finally deserve it, but because you finally made room for it. You cleared the noise, you slowed the pace, you chose presence over panic, and life only enters where there is space to receive it. So let me leave you with this. Stop chasing the room, become the light in it. Stop begging for recognition, become undeniable. Stop running after approval, stand rooted in your worth, because the moment your energy no longer chases, everything that once ignored you will feel you. Everything that once avoided you will seek you. And everything that once felt out of reach will start moving closer on its own. You were never born to run after life. Life was always meant to run toward you.